Hey everyone, welcome to Soundpaint. Welcome to a deep dive into the beautiful, fascinating world of the century Solo Flugelhorn. Born in the early 19th century in Europe, it was really there to boost the battlefields. You may recall that sort of soothing trumpet sound. That was the flugelhorn, that was the original intention with its design. But later on, it transcended itself and was adapted into other styles of music. With jazz, for example, you may recall artists like Miles Davis or Chet Baker really owning the flugelhorn. And for me, there's just something so magical about this, how instrument and music can transcend itself over time. We went straight from the sound of war into something as soothing and beautiful and non-warlike as jazz. But the flugelhorn is more than just a flugelhorn inside a Soundpaint. As you may know, in Soundpaint, we can also transcend instruments into becoming other types of instruments. For example, we can turn the flugelhorn into a French horn, we can turn the flugelhorn into a trumpet, a trombone, a tuba, any other kind of brass instrument using our new color mode. I sometimes talk about butter smooth in sampling. What does that really mean? Well, this is a great example of it. It's just so smooth. I move my mod wheel. I can play polyphonic legato as well, same deal, but like kind of more jazzy, at least if we take more jazzy chords. We have that smooth non-vibrato. It's so beautifully pristine and pastoral. It's a very noble, elegant kind of sound. Let's try it with vibrato. I want to say like it's smooth jazz, but we also know that this instrument happened before smooth jazz was a thing. I have to remember to breathe when I play this one. Sometimes I find myself with virtual instruments playing lines that are too long. If you look in this sequence here, this is about as long as someone would be able to play, I think at least. So I like to breathe when I'm playing here. You'll see me almost sort of move my body when I'm playing it, just to sort of breathe with the instrument, like make it feel more natural that way. Now, as mentioned at the beginning of the video, we have our unique color mode inside of Soundpaint. Color allows me to shape an instrument into another instrument roughly in the same family. So in the case of the flugelhorn here, I can change the color and almost make it into a French horn. To me, color is a new exploration tool inside of Soundpaint. We can actually take our orchestrations and make them into something more. So here is the flugelhorn in its normal condition, and then check out what happens when I move the color button down here. We're gonna go through different permutations of instruments. Once we get to -12, it's kind of like a French horn. We can hear it gets a little bit darker. Also super beautiful. It's kind of like a young French horn. And down to -12 here, we got this. Here's a sequence played with the French Flugelhorn. So soft. I think it's so cool how we can have a solo instrument, a pastoral, clean, classical war horn from the early 19th century, and make it into something so beautiful and polyphonic here as well. This is more than just a flugelhorn. I still hear a war horn in there, even though we're down at -12 in color, but it just goes to show that the flugelhorn itself was a transformational instrument, and now inside of Soundpaint we can make it even further. When we lower the color mode, we normally transcend the instrument down to a darker kind of color. So as brass instruments get bigger, the color tends to get warmer. Think about the tuba, for example, which we also got here, which is the sort of ultimate warm incarnation. This is the flugelhorn at -24 in color. So it's not the same instrument, and yet it is. That's a flugelhorn. We also got a wealth of short notes inside of the Century Flugelhorn. You'll notice over here in the key switch module here that in this particular section here, we have multiple shorts loaded. You can load them individually as well. If you look here, the directories, you'll notice that you can load individual articulations, or you can load the key switches here if you want everything in front of you. If we just briefly look at the flugelhorn here, we have our 6 different kind of legatos. We have a wealth of arcs. We have sustains with and without vibrato. We have crescendos, and then we have our sound labs as well. We'll be going through all of these in the video here. But let me just try to demonstrate first how the different kind of short notes work. If you notice here in the early part of the sequence here, first it played our fanfare shorts. These are a little more sharp sounding kind of staccatos, and then we have regular staccatos as well. Let me just play this first sequence here again and try to listen to the difference between the two. So this one here would be the fanfares, and this would be traditional staccato. It's a little more harsh and pinpointed on the attack when we play with the fanfare shorts, versus more rounded kind of staccato. It's subtle, but it's there. And what I also did in the sequence was to combine key switches. For example, take a short note, say our fanfare arc here, and then combine it with an arc. The arc alone just sounds like this. So the attack is kind of swoopy. He's like playing into the note, but with the attack added to it, we get more of a punchy kind of attack. A little bit softer on the normal staccato. And speaking of arcs, I just love the arcs. These are different ways of swelling in the sound. So the arcs are traditionally long like a sustain, but the players weaving their emotions a little more into them. We see it all the time in classical music. It's very rare that we are in static dynamics. Things are always swelling and moving. So we're trying to capture that with the arcs. These are true human performances. For example, the first one here, it's long, but just with a tad of sweet vibrato in it. And here's another kind of arc. It's a little more abrupt, and we're going further in a crescendo. More dramatic. So here's an arc without any vibrato. And a soaring, very sort of emotive type of arc. I mean, you can just hear the human up here. That little in the beginning is so sweet. I also built another key switch program here with sustains in them, but because we have non-vibrato and vibrato sustains, I also added a variety of the arcs we just listened to into these key switches here. So you have access both to sustains, vibrato, non-vibrato, all the arcs, and crescendo as well. The Synthy Solo Flugelhorn contains 5 different microphone positions. We have what we call mix A and B. These are in traditional orchestral seating, so you have the natural panning of where the player would sit in a hall. But we also have 3 other microphones in form of our close, our deca, and our wide microphone as well. So you have all the controls you want in the world. But I just want to say, if you want natural orchestral seating, like pre-panned, so this is where the player would normally sit in the sort of 3-dimensional orchestra, use the mix A or the mix B to your liking. We've got a wide microphone, far back in the hall, deca, close, mix A, and mix B. But we also got what we call sound labs. Sound labs is where we experiment with traditional instruments. We will bend the flugelhorn into something entirely different. I'll be modest here in the beginning and just apply our rack time stretcher here to one of the arcs. That's a flugelhorn. I mean, what's really going on here is that we're playing well outside the natural range of the flugelhorn. If we look down here on our keyboard label, you can always activate that by clicking here. We have something called natural legato or natural sustain in this case here. That would be the natural range of the instrument, what it can do in the natural world. But down here, we can easily play 3 octaves deeper, because in Soundpaint, we're using every single note you possibly have on a keyboard. Even if your keyboard went like 10 octaves the other ways, you would still be able to play, but it gives us this kind of sound. It's some kind of like alien reactor. And a little bit in the same vein of thinking, I took the flugelhorn yet again and synthesized it. In this case here, I added our ladder filter. This is a true model filter of the awesome Moog Model D, the Stradivarius of synthesizers, and applied some cutoff to it here and played it more sort of like a monophonic synthesizer. So it's a Flugel synth, it's just a mean fat synthesizer as well. For this one here, I used our offset module here. Offset allows us to go into a waveform or an instrument or anything playing and just say, hey, I want to hear it from the middle of the waveform. You don't have to do all the stuff in the start. That makes a big difference when you have a flugelhorn. For example, in the beginning here, it would sound like. But as we go deeper into the sound here, all of a sudden we have a mean synthesizer. Here's an attempt at creating sort of a 1920s super old vinyl kind of sound, predominantly by using effects and our bit brush here, really sort of lowering the bit level down to 11 bits. It gives that old craggy vinyl kind of sound. I also wanted to try to create an emulation of the Australian didgeridoo, even though it's totally not the same thing here. This is a brass instrument, it doesn't sound the same, but particularly by playing with the resonance filter, also in our ladder filter here, and playing with the overtones and harmonics of it, really trying to sort of shape new notes out of it. I also tried an experiment with the flugel where I took 3 different instances of the flugelhorn and put them in different kind of tunings, -12, +7, and then I added a shimmer reverb on top of it here, which really has a sort of church-like quality, and added another instance of that as well. You can actually set the tone of the reverb inside of the shimmer here as well. So one at +12 and one at +7, combined with all this stuff here, and we get this sort of interstellarish organ. Also made a variation where I added a little bit from the Soundlabs art Time that we played with a little bit earlier on, giving this sort of alien reactor kind of sound on top of it. Imagine standing on the battlefield in the early 19th century and blasting these things out as the armies just run over each other and eternal bloodshed, only to go forward in time and then see like how beautiful this thing could become and how much better we can do. Instead of fighting each other, why not spend all that energy on creating beautiful things instead? Anyway, that's the story of the Flugelhorn. Thanks for watching.